Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Two Chiefs, One Mic podcast. I am Scott Hughes, and I am running solo this week. Mike is currently vacationing in Florida for spring break because he's smarter than me, and I'm just doing this episode all by myself. But I'm excited because I have Chief Shaw on the program today from Webster, Massachusetts. Those of you that listen to this podcast or watch this podcast, you know how much of an advocate I am for LinkedIn. I think every chief, every executive should have a LinkedIn account. You should promote what you're doing, what your agencies are doing. That is how we grow as a profession. And a few weeks ago, I was scrolling LinkedIn, looking at what everybody's up to, and I came across Chief Shaw and his post and what he's doing for his agency with regards to financial wellness. So I immediately sent him a LinkedIn message and said, hey, we'd love to get you on the podcast. I think it'd be awesome if you could get on here and talk about the program and what you're seeing it do for your officers. So luckily he said yes, and here we are. So Chief Shaw, welcome to the program, sir. It's an honor to have you on here.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Webster, Massachusetts?
So Webster is a town of about 18,000 people. It's a very unique town. We're in south central Worcester County, Massachusetts. So we're actually right on the border of Connecticut, very close to Rhode Island as well. So it's that presents some unique challenges. Webster is it's a very interesting, it's an old mill town. So if you know anything about the Northeast, we had a lot of industry back in the day, and we had a lot of mill that was the backbone of our economy. As times have gone on, those mills have gone silent, and some of them have been repurposed for apartments, smaller businesses. With those mills came a lot of mill housing, so we call them triple deckers up here, 3 families, but there's a lot of multifamily housing. But Webster's also very unique that we have a large lake in Webster. It's about 14 acres. It's actually 3 huge ponds, and they have multi-million-dollar houses around it. And there's a highway that runs through the town, so it kind of separates Webster into 2 different areas. On one side of the highway is kind of like your regular suburban America, single family houses, mostly middle to upper class. And then we have our other half where there's all the old mill housing, all the multifamily housing, which is lower income. And that's where predominantly a large amount of our calls for service take place. When people ask me what kind of town it is, I say Webster is a very unique place to be a police officer. It is a small town with a lot of big city problems. So we have our largest city. We're about 10 minutes south of Worcester, which is a city of about 200,000, which has their host of issues. So we see a lot of connections between us and Worcester and a lot of the other surrounding areas as well. So it's a great place to work. We're a very busy department. It presents some staffing challenges, some economic challenges, but I've been here going on 30 years, and it's been a great time. I've been chief for, I think, going on my 8th year now. So it's been fun. I have a great group of people, so I'm very happy and blessed to be here.
And how many officers do you have sworn?
We are 33 sworn, including, myself, the command staff. We have 19 on patrol, a few others in specialty assignments. We've got a couple of vacancies right now. We're a very young department. We had a lot of turnover with the last 5 or 10 years. That older crew is retiring. And so we're trying to fill those positions. We're finding some of those struggles that law enforcement organizations all across the country are finding. The pool of applicants just isn't like it was back when we were getting on in the mid to late 90s. It's a lot harder now. We're all competing for good qualified applicants.
Yeah, then I suspect one of the issues that you're dealing with recruiting is so you're an average size agency in America. You're about the same size as my department, same size as Mike's department. So you represent most agencies in America based on your population and the number of officers that you have. When you talk about recruiting, you're probably like me, like Mike, you're trying to think of ways that you can compete with some of these other agencies that may have more specialized assignments. They may have more opportunities because they're larger or whatever the case might be. And your post on LinkedIn that I came across talked about a financial wellness component. Before
Yes.
you jump into that idea, was that born out of how can we recruit and retain folks, or how'd you come up with the idea?
Honestly, like a lot of our other colleagues, I stole it from somebody else. I saw the idea and I was like, that's actually a phenomenal idea. I was on another social media platform, Instagram, and I was scrolling through, and the algorithm had kicked off this person that his Instagram handle is Millionaire Cop. And I
Okay.
would encourage you to go follow him if you haven't already, if you have that platform. And he had brought up, he had a department had a recruiting poster, and he said, "Oh, there's a lot. They offer a lot of good things. Different agencies, officer wellness programs, which is a good topic to have." But he brought up the fact that it was missing a financial wellness component, and how that would really kind of complete the circle for a good officer wellness program. And I was like, you know what? That's a brilliant idea. And at that time, we actually had somebody in FTO. So I talked to our FTO coordinator. I said, "Hey, give me a couple hours with this new officer just so we can explain some things. You know, I'm certainly not a financial expert. I'm not a financial advisor, but you know, talk about how the retirement system works, how the pensions work, how it's may not be enough." And some of the situations that I've seen from guys that have retired and have to go on and get second, third jobs and work well into their 60s and even their 70s. And the other investments that we have out here, opportunities, and how important that is at such a young age to get involved in those opportunities so that you don't have to rely on just the pension. And when you retire, that you're financially sound and some of the other benefits that go on with that. So I saw that and I thought that was great. And then I posted that. I actually sent him a direct message on Instagram and said, "Hey, you know, I just want you to know I stole your idea," and it was really well received by the officer, the young 22-year-old girl that had just graduated the academy and got her on her first week of FTO. And, you know, that's something we're going to incorporate going forward as well.
And yeah, so that was my next question is how have you so I appreciate hearing, you saw it and you stole it. Like, don't try to reinvent the wheel, right? I know we used to always joke about just send me the document in Word so I can change the patch and change the names because it's awesome. Kudos to you for seeing something and taking the initiative. So maybe from a practicality standpoint, maybe walk us through like how does this work in your agency? You mentioned this particular officer was in week 1 of FTO, so you grabbed her kind of early on and kind of planted the seed or laid the foundation with respect to why finances and planning is important and all that stuff. How have you incorporated it then throughout the agency?
So when speaking to this gentleman, he also has a group where he offers financial. I don't want to say it's advice because that would make him out to he's a financial planner or anything like that. He doesn't sell any products, but we got to talking, and he found out that I was from Massachusetts, and he's like, "I offer kind of financial counseling, I guess, or advice for officers on certain ways that they can pay down their debts or you know how not to focus on details and overtime." And he offered that service, and it was very inexpensive. And so in talking to him, it was, you know, he had never been into Massachusetts before, and there was one department that he was talking to and they backed out for whatever reason, but the cost was like very reasonable. It was like $106 for the year. So I was, you know, my first question was, well, is that per officer? And he's like, "No, that essentially enables the officers to get his advice." So we sign a contract, and you know, we set him up as a vendor. We paid for the $106, the fee, signed the contract, and then we put it out to all the officers and said, "Hey, this is something that's available to you, and it's totally voluntary. They're not selling you insurance. They're not selling you into a Roth IRA. There's no plans or anything like that. It's just somebody that can help you kind of work your way through, especially in those early years." I know I look back to when I was younger. I mean, I remember at one point, you know, I was young, I was a detective and had 2 young kids at home. Wife was working. And I remember at one point calling her and saying, "We have $18 in both accounts and the mortgage is due. And I don't know what we're going to do to make ends meet. We're paying daycare and everything like that, working the overtime and the details." It was just, you know, we got through it, but I've seen so many people, they get stuck in the overtime and detail. They think that making that big money is the be all end all, and it's not. It just they get accustomed to those things and they buy the big trucks and they get stuck in these debt cycles that they can't get out of. So I wanted to offer this to him, and originally my thought was, well, I would just pay for it for everybody. But in talking with him, you know, he only charges like $106 per officer, and he said I would do it for free, but I find that if we charge them, that they have a little skin in the game, so they're more apt to stick to what he says,
Right.
as far as advice and guidance, and it's kind of like a mentorship for financial wellness, essentially, if you will. So I was like, "Great, that sounds good." And so then he actually had suggested that And if they do it for a year, you can reimburse them. And I was like, perfect. So that way, if somebody signs up with him and they pay the $106 and they follow through with for the year and meet their whatever their goals are, and I get a satisfactory review from him, or he tells me, yep, this person's been involved. I mean, they may not solve all their problems in a year, but like I'll pay the $106. So
Nice.
if they're making progress, because I remember as a young patrolman, I started, and shortly after I became, started working the road, there were two officers that retired. One was a sergeant and one was a senior patrolman, 30 something years on the job. And they were getting carriages at the supermarket in town. And I was blown away because they didn't have any financial planning. They didn't do any of the deferred comp. We call it deferred comp. It's kind of like the 401k that our state runs for the municipal employees. They were working, and I was like, but that guy was a sergeant with the police department. I go, why is he getting carriages? I did that when I was 15 years old. So at that point, like for me, I was always, and I enrolled in deferred comp and have always tried to invest, early on when you have the kids and you have the responsibilities. Yes, I can't invest as much as I would like, but I had, even if it was $40 a week going that plan, and I was consistent with it. And now, have 30 years later, I'm retiring in 17 months. I'm in good shape. I've been fortunate to promote, so my pension will be a little bit higher than most, but I also know that, when I max out at my 80%, I'm leaving. I'm done. It'll be 31 years, and I won't have to get another job if I don't want to, because
good for you.
I have those other resources that I've invested on over this time, and it's paid off. My kids, we did education funds for them. So we took all the avenues, and my wife has as well. So we, taking some of that advice that he talks about, and we were putting that to work early on, and then try to impart that on the officers that are coming in now. I mean, I can't tell you how many big trucks are parked out back, like that kids get. They get these big trucks. It seems
Motorcycles.
better, but it's so
Big trucks, motorcycles, boats, jet skis.
Yeah. So we threw out his information, and I wasn't sure how it would go because it was voluntary, and he's had 2 or 3 sign up, and I was actually talked to one, and I don't ask who they are unless they come forward later on. I don't ask for any information. I was thrilled. I was like, oh, you got 2 or 3. I go, that's fantastic. That's worth it. That's worth it all day for me. Because that's one of the things that I've always been big on. Hey, you got to, I push our deferred comp program. Like, you have to do investments, whether you do a Roth IRA, deferred comp, do something. Like, you have to invest something because the pension's not going to be enough. And don't get stuck in the details, like with the traffic details, it's on and after the overtime. Don't get stuck into those ruts where like you depend on working. Because I've seen that happen. Guys working 70, 80 hours a week, and their families fail. They fail. A lot of them no longer work here. They didn't leave on their own terms. And it stinks. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see a young officer go down that road if they don't have to.
When I think
it's totally avoidable.
Yeah, thanks. I feel like the financial stress, that stress carries with you onto the job. So, I mean, if you're working a 8, 10, 12-hour shift, and then you're working, 2, 4, 6 hours after that at a nightclub or at some bingo hall or doing something, and then you're going home and you're getting 5 or 6 hours sleep, and you come back in and do it all over again. We can point to research that suggests that you're going to be more likely to use force. You're going to generate complaints. You're going to fall asleep while you're driving. You're going to crash your car. I mean, there's all these other ancillary things that occur because you're tired, because you're working, because you are financially outside of your means. And I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that the person you just described with the big truck in the back, while I didn't have a big truck, I was the boat, I was the jet ski guy. Back when I started, like you, 12-hour shifts weren't a thing. And I think now it's probably even a little bit easier to get caught up in that, because for a lot of departments that are working 10 or 12-hour shifts, like for my agency on the 12s, they're off every other Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's easier to go buy these toys and have more time off to use them. Where back in the day, I worked 4, had 2 off, worked 4, had 2 off. You didn't have as much free time, if you will. So anyhow, I think it's awesome that you offer this up to your agency. Do you ever think you'll take it and you'll incorporate it into like part of your like your FTO program as like part of their even if they don't formally sign up with this particular gentleman or any other these companies, do you think you'll ever get to the point where like, hey, as part of the FTO process, you're going to come in, you're going to talk to Chief Shaw. He's going to spend a couple hours with you, making sure that you've got something in place because it is important. It's important as you know, you're getting ready to retire in a few months. I'm getting ready to retire in a few months. And I look back on my career and I can remember when I was probably 23, 24 years old. It was just when direct deposit was kind of like a thing, right?
Yep.
Maybe a little bit later than that. But anyhow, it was the first time that you mean we didn't have to actually take a check and go to the bank. They said, no, it'll automatically go into your bank account. We thought, holy shit, this is incredible. And I remember they also then for the first time they said if you want to take some of your money, you can send it automatically to like a supplemental life insurance company or to if you have another bank you want to send money to. And a couple of the guys were like, hey, we should open up an account at the police credit union and we should throw some money in that account. If we just, $25, whatever, so once a paycheck or twice a month or whatever, like, I wonder how much that would build up to. So we did it, right? It's $25. And then we all said this. We said, we're not even going to get an ATM card. Like, if we want to get money out of this account, we have to physically drive downtown Cincinnati, 30 miles away, and we got to actually go to the bank. So a bunch of us started this stupid account. We put 25, 30 bucks in a week, and I ain't shitting you, Chief. A few years go by, and we're like, my, there's like a lot of money in this thing for a 25, 26-year-old kid. Like, why do we put more money in back in the day? Why do we do 100? Why do we only do 25? So anyhow, I think it's funny to see how far we've progressed now in agencies like yours who are looking out there for programs and you see this opportunity. It's like, hey, let's get this guy or gal in here, have them talk about what they can do, and then teach it to these guys and gals that are coming on. So back to my original question, sorry, but do you think, is that going to be part of the FTO program? You think, will they come and at least have a conversation, or what do you think?
Absolutely, 100%. We actually plan on hiring. We're hopeful to hire 3 this year because I have the vacancies coming up. And even if we get somebody, excuse me, that laterals from another agency, we're still going to have that conversation because a lot of times, like people think they know, like even the pension system. That could be. There's a lot of little pitfalls in there that you got to be aware of, like different options you can take and how that all works. So there's a lot there. And then just stressing the whole outside investments, even if it's like you said, $25 a month or a week rather. That's huge because that's how we all start, especially when we're young and have young families. And
That's
then the next
$1,200 a
thing you
year.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, and then as you become, your kids get older, you're not paying $500 a week for childcare. You get raises, you can incorporate more deposits into that, and that compound interest grows. And then after next thing you know, especially if you leave it alone and don't look at it, don't let the market's going to do its thing. Learned long ago, don't let the losses aren't a bad thing because it's just going to rebound.
Yeah.
So we're definitely, and we incorporate that into another whole part of we've always been very big on officer wellness and the CISM teams and the peer support and the mentor programs. So we're going to roll that into another part of it as well. So like we'll have the financial wellness piece, but then we'll also have like the mental health piece as well. So we talk about that. So it's a good couple hours. And just talking to this young officer, they were like, that was actually really, really helpful. So thank you. And just knowing them and I'm pretty persistent as far as making them sign up for the deferred comp. I said, even if you don't stay with it and you roll it over to whatever you roll it into,
Right.
do something. Don't sit there and just do nothing because time goes by quick and the longer you put it off, the worse it's the longer the more losses that you're gonna in you're gonna have. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
just one of those things like you've got to get on it is whatever you can, when you can, and then gradually build on it. Especially for us, it's a pre-tax deduction. So it's not like you're seeing that bottom line. So you can actually put in a lot more and it's easy to just everything with the apps now, it's so easy to just to add you can do it by percentage. So if you have a big week, if you have court, if you have some overtime and details, it's a bigger chunk going in. So it's not just like when I signed up, it was like a flat rate of $25.
Mhm.
Now they can do like 5%, 10%,
Wow. That's
which is
cool.
nice because you have those big weeks, holiday pay, you get more put in there, and you don't even after a while, you don't even miss it.
Well, I think we've said this, Mike and I talk about this a lot on here with various guests, is law enforcement's a family. We all know it's a brother and a sister and blah, 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 blah. We've all heard all this stuff. But when you truly get a new officer that comes in, especially a young officer, right? 21, 22, 23 years old, who doesn't really know anything yet. They don't know like finances and stuff like that. They're not thinking about that stuff. When you bring them in early on and you show them, hey, this is what I would suggest you do. This is what worked for me. This is what didn't work for another officer. This is when, in 30 years from now, which is going to be here before you know it, this is where you can be if you do X amount of investment. Or, hey, here's a guy that a lot of us use that really, works well with first responders, and they can show you the difference between deferred comp and private investments and whatever the case might be. You're showing them you care about them, and you're showing them from the onset, hey, you're more than just a badge number. You're more than just an employee. We want you to be successful here, but we also want you to be successful in your personal life, because we know how many calls do you go to domestic related that center around money, right? Or there's an underlying issue. Somebody lost their job. Somebody got laid off. Somebody's not working. Somebody can't pay the bills. We're stressed out, blah, 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 right? So I think it just goes to show that you really care for your people and you appreciate them, you know, and that means a lot to them. So even if they don't sign up, just offering it up to them, and it sounds maybe like you'll have just more and more and more commitment as the program continues to grow. And you never know what those conversations in your office for 2 hours, week 2 of FTO, where that's going to pay off down the road. So nice job. Are there any maybe tips or tricks or techniques that when you heard you were like, huh, I never thought about that, that you think folks would want to know about? Did anything stand out?
Yeah, so well, he's got a couple of different. So he was great. He gave me his free ebook that's sent out. So he's got a couple of like pay down plans. But one that I used that I had a lot of success was if you have like 3 credit cards, paying the lowest balance off. If that was, say you're paying $100 off on each one, and when you pay the lowest balance off, you take that $100 and put it to the next highest one. So I think it's called like the avalanche method or something, until the balances are paid off. And then, so eventually when you get to that highest balance, you're making the biggest chunks in there, and your bottom line is still the same. You're still putting out the same amount of money. That seemed to help quite a bit. I actually talked to one of the officers that had reached out and was working with him, and he's like, yeah, he goes, it was the best thing I ever did. He goes, because he's going through some stuff right now, but and some financial issues, and he was like, you know what, we came up with a plan, and it's saving me like $900. I was like, that's
Perfect.
fantastic, a month.
Yeah.
So he's, so in taking that burden off of him, because I know it was killing him, as it is to be expected. So we see these, especially these young kids, they just, with the student loans that a lot of them have, which is just crazy money.
Yeah.
And they come in, and they're coming in, and they're just, trying to get a house, and even car payments, even if they get like, a modest car payment now is $400 or $500.
Mhm.
And just, it's hard for them to get out from underneath that. And it's easy to get stuck into those black holes of debt, and to have somebody kind of help them navigate through that and better prepare themselves for their financial future. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, their home life is going to be so much better. I mean, I've seen, I've seen officers lost their jobs.
Mm.
Unfortunately, when the stress, as we all know, especially as chiefs, when the burdens become too much, they turn to other vices, and it's usually
Yep.
either whether it's a substance or drugs, infidelity, whatever. The behavior just manifests itself, and eventually it costs them their job. Unfortunately, we've seen that reality even in a department of 33 sworn officers. I've had some sad stories that didn't have to be that way, and we tried to help them, but unfortunately, it was just, we weren't able to. And it's just, if we can start at a young, even early on in their career, and impart that mindset, and to be responsible financially, it's just going to pay dividends so much more down the road, and they'll
Mm.
have a much better career. Because this job, like in Massachusetts, we have to work, well, then now they have to work, I think, till they can max out their pension. I want to say it's 57 and 33 years of service, or it's something ridiculous, some
Mm.
pension reform. For me, it's 32, 55. So
Mm.
I'll be able to retire at 55 years after doing this job for 32 years. I've been very fortunate and promoted up. But a guy that's working the road for 32 years, that's a long time,
No, it's a
especially in a
lot.
town like this. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's asking a lot of somebody. And to have that, if you have a financial burden on top of that, uh, it's
Well,
just not.
we would reach out and help folks if they were going through marital issues, or if they were dealing with a substance issue, or if they were dealing with, whatever kind of their child has an issue at school. Like we would work with them. This is in the same boat, right? We're working with them financially to help them out, because again, to to the point I think you just made, and I said earlier, is we're going to get a better officer on the street. If we can reduce their stress, if we can make their home life better, we can help get a better cop on the street answering calls for service. They're not going to be so stressed out and everything else. So, well, Chief, listen, we like to keep these things right around a half hour. We're coming up on about 26 and a half minutes. Is there anything else that you're like, hey, I want to get this out before we wrap things up? I think you're doing great things out there in Mass.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would recommend checking him out on Instagram. I don't know that he's on. I think he might be on LinkedIn. What I'll do is I'll look for the link and send it to you. I know it's a long last name, JDC. I think it's JDC Group, but it's a Millionaire Cop on Instagram. Check him out. He's got a lot of good stuff. I know he's on Facebook too. He's on that platform as well. I will say it's funny. So I put our thing out, and I didn't, I got reached out from like 2 or 3 other chiefs, and they've signed on in Massachusetts. So the word's getting out, which is great. We kind of fly by the seat of it. We try to think outside of the box here because we have some unique challenges here in Webster, so we have to do things sometimes off the cuff. But this has worked out really well, and I'm hopeful that other departments will follow suit.
Awesome. Well, that's how we get better as a profession. That's how we get better as leaders and chiefs, as we listen to other folks and see what other chiefs are doing around the country. And if all we ever do is stay in our same silo, we're never going to realize what else is out there. So, well, listen, Chief, we'll make sure we put all that information up on the podcast and in the notes and all that fun stuff. Keep up the great work in Webster, Massachusetts. What's the weather like right now?
Actually, it's nice today. We had the longest winter, I think, like ever this year, it feels like. But today's actually like 70. It's beautiful, but I think tomorrow's supposed to get down to 48. So if you don't like the weather in New England, just wait 5 minutes. Which is, of course, it's the first day of short sleeves are optional in my department. So I'm going to short sleeves. I don't care if it's 30 degrees. I'll just wear a jacket because I'm sick of the mock neck and long sleeves.
Lead by example. I love it, Chief. Well, Chief Shaw, Webster, Massachusetts. Thanks again for being on the what should be the 2 Chiefs, 1 Mic. Today it's the 1 Chief, 1 Mic podcast, as Mike is living his best life in Siesta Key, Florida right now. He never did text me back, so he must be living his best life right now. So, jealous. Chief, thanks a lot. We appreciate you coming on.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. Take care.
Take care now.
1